Okay. All right. So today's session is titled Reviewing Multi-Site Certificates. And I'm going to talk about a couple things about TAT and about FPY. But the main focus is going to be about reviewing multi-site certificates. And what we're going to talk about is the requirement to make sure that when we have a multi-site certificate, we make sure that all the sites and remote locations have been assessed and TR approved prior to sending something to the certificate group. And I'm going to acknowledge with you folks, right off the bat, our system is highly manual. And what we're doing is DG people and TR people is essentially an inspection. And so things will be missed. We process roughly 3,000 to 4,000 reports a year. Of those 3,000 to 4,000 reports, maybe a third to 40% have either another site or a remote location associated with them. And in a highly manual system, where you're relying on this kind of final inspection to ensure the quality of the product, a few things are going to go through. And so all we're doing here is we've made some minor system changes, but what we're doing here is trying to emphasize again the good practices and give a methodology for people who are reviewing the multi-site certificates. And you might say to me, well, Dave, why don't we fix the system? Why don't we add error proofing in? It can be done. It's very expensive. We've actually looked into it. And we're in a situation now, especially right now, where cash is not likely going to be spent on system enhancements, even ones that are, somewhat important. So you have to understand our structure, our size, the economic reality that we're living with, and we're going to try and do our best to address the issue, which is not issuing certificates prior to all sites and remote locations being assessed and reviewed. And we're going to do it in this manner. So, sorry, I don't know why this is doing this. Click off that and go to this. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next chart. I always start you guys off with the DQS quality policy. The topic we're going to talk about today is making sure that is tied to making sure we issue internationally respected certificates. Every time we issue a certificate before all the sites and remote locations have been assessed and TR approved, it's a threat to our accreditation. Now, the last time this happened was a training, and some of you guys were probably in it, that I did back in January of 2019. So it doesn't happen at a high enough frequency to get super excited about, but when it does happen, it's really bad. And so that's why we're going to talk about it. We're also going to talk about TAT and FPY, so that's where I have the excellent service underlined there. I don't talk to you guys all that often, so I wanted to give you kind of an update of where we are with our performance. And in general, it's pretty good. 2020 so far, at the beginning of the year, we had 572 reports. Today, 5 a.m. this morning, we had 195. So we've done a good job burning down the backlog. And this backlog was created by the fact that with the introduction of Audit Manager, we now have to review all surveillance reports that use that tool. So there's quite a few more reports that were all kind of in process that we were not planning on reviewing that got dumped into our queue, and that's why it was so large on January 1st. Our CG FPY, so this is when we send something forward to the certificate group. That's what CG stands for. At the end of 2019, it was 79%, but trending up. And in 2020, it's 95% as of April 27th, and now it's 96%. So we're off to a really good start. It bodes well for us to, I'm not even going to curse it, but finish above 90%, which is the goal. Our TAT has gone down a little bit, and so I'll talk about that towards the end of this presentation. We went from a little bit under 10 days to 16.99, and at the end of last month, we were down to 16.1 because we burned through the backlog. And our FPY has dropped. We finished 2019 at 82%. Those of you that came to the national meeting or listened in heard me say We at one time hit 85%, then we switched to audit manager and it plummeted like a rock. And so now we're building our way back up. I was kind of hoping after the national meeting it would go up a little more, but it's kind of still hovering around the mid 70s. So that's where we're at right now. As a group, and as a group I mean the TR group, our number one issue is the issuance of certificates for multi-sites before all the sites and remote locations have been audited and TR approved. We're in the 6th minute of this presentation, and I think I've said that 5 times. And that's purposeful because it's something you have to remember. Now, there are cues in our system to help you remember, and we're going to talk about some of those. But if you're going to be in this game of reviewing reports, and I look at the folks that are on this call, like Pat and the guy they don't do sampling, but they do have multi-sites, and Linda and Sarah and Santosh, all you guys do a lot of our reviews for us, and you've reviewed multi-site certs. So, your understanding of this requirement is super critical for us. Secondly, TAT is important because it relates to customer service, our ability to turn certs. And then thirdly, there's a perception, I think, amongst the audit staff that TR is picking on them. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, our golden rule for the 7th time, all sites and remote locations in the multi-site scheme must be audited and TR approved prior to issuance of the cert. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to send you guys all a short quiz. It's 10 questions. It's super easy. You have to get 100% on it. All related to anything I've talked about in these charts, and all of it's related to multi-site certificates, really. So what is the problem? Well, this is from the last time I talked about this problem. And the reason I put it up here isn't to belabor a problem that's now more than a year old, but to illustrate all the things that can go wrong in the structure of one of these. This is a multi-site cert that had some sites and some remote locations down here. And this is what happened with it. So we had a main site that was TR approved but never sent the certificate. We had some that were not yet audited. We had 3 sites that were sent the certificate. And then we had some that were clubbed. And it was very complicated to try and figure it out. And while I say it was complicated, there's 8, 9 sites on this thing. It's not differential equations complicated. It's complicated because it's tedious and you have to track the status of all these things and understand the requirement that you're tracking to. And so I thought about it and I thought, maybe part of the problem is not everybody has a methodology. So what would my methodology be if I was sitting down to review a multi-site cert? And so I tried to walk through a logical sequence of events, and that's what I'm going to go through with you now. So if you don't have a set way of doing it that works for you, that ensures that you're going to check that all the sites have been audited and TR approved, you could try this way as your methodology. Regardless of what methodology you use, hopefully everybody's starting point is the current certificate. Why should you start there? Well, because the current certificate defines the structure, right? It tells you what sites and remote locations are supposed to be on the cert and what their scope is. Now, how do you get the current certificate? When you go in Audit Center, you see there's this little button here, and you click View the Certificate. And when you hit that button, it sends you to the DQS page. You type in the VR number, and you can pull up the certificate. Now, some of you who've done this probably go, well, Dave, that doesn't always work. The cert's not always there, or the link is broken or something like that. That's true. So what could you do in that case? Well, you have a signed cert in your package. You could default to that. And you have the cert that was given to the auditor in the audit pack. You could default to that. Now, there's a caveat here. I mean, those could be older certs. So unless you're getting the one that's on our website, which is the document of truth, you're taking a little bit of a risk with using just the signed cert or the cert in the audit pack. So I highlight that to you. It's not necessarily wrong not to look up the certificate. But if I was doing a multi-site cert, I would certainly try and get the document of truth. I wouldn't take any risk about the sites and remote locations that are on that certificate. So this is always, for any review, this really should be your starting point. The second step is knowing whether the job you're reviewing is the one that is going to be sent to the cert group to generate the cert. So how do you know that? Well, in Audit Center, there are little flags. There's a flag in the VG tab. You see this one here. It says cert needed yes. That's a cert yes job. There's a flag in the TR tab. Cert needed yes. So you can see it right in the TR tab. If you're doing the one that says cert needed yes, now you're in. Now you've got to do a lot more checking. If you're doing one that says cert needed no, nothing is going to be sent to the certificate group. No cert's going to be generated. You can almost treat that as a standalone site. You can review it just like you would review any single site or single remote location report. You can get to the end of your review. You can press the button to approve it and not look anything else up. You don't have to look and see if all the other sites or remote locations have been audited. Why? Because you're not generating a certificate. And these things go together. The only time you really need to know whether all the sites and remote locations have been audited is when you want to, and approved, TR approved, is when you want to generate a certificate. So I'm going to stop here. And hopefully what I've said now up to this point has been very basic, looking at the cert and understanding the job, cert needed yes, cert needed no. Everybody with me to this point? Okay, I'll assume silence is golden. If you're having trouble understanding something I'm saying, or it doesn't make sense to you and you don't feel comfortable talking about it in the crowd, although looking at all these names, I doubt any of you would mind asking a question, reach out to me on an email afterwards and I'll try and answer any questions that come up. So now we're going to move on to the third point. So now when you're doing a multi-site cert, or sites and remote locations on the same cert, there are two possible structures. For some programs, like medical, ITF, I think is in this bucket, all sites and remote locations must be audited. They don't have site sampling. And so you don't have to worry about the structure in that case. All you got to know is that all the sites and remote locations have to be audited. For other programs, QM, UM, they allow site sampling. So now you got to figure out, well, what sites were going to be sampled. And your first clue is something called the SOV notes. And if you've been doing reviews, and all the names on this list have been doing reviews, you see these notes. They were put in there by customer service. What they're trying to communicate at the time the job was set up is what the BR numbers of the sites that were going to be audited were going to be, and typically they'll tell you the last one that was going to be audited. This is customer service's attempt to communicate to the VG and TR of what the structure of the certificate is. You should not trust the SOV notes. They are a clue. And the reason you shouldn't trust them it has nothing to do with customer service. It has to do with timing. These jobs were set up sometimes 2, 3, 4 months in advance. So these SOV notes might be 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 months old. And so things change. So they may say last job is, at the time they set this up was BR number 1, 2, 3, 4. But things have moved in the schedule. And now in reality, last job is BR number 2, 3, 4, 5. Customer service doesn't go back. After the job has been set up, they're not going back and updating these SOV notes. So the way you should treat them as a reviewer is as a helpful hint as to whether something is on sampling and what sites were originally planned to be sampled. Okay, so now you've got the SOV notes. Maybe you still can't figure it out from there. The next thing you got to do, and this is maybe new, although most of after the first session we had maybe 13 reviewers in it, most of them were doing this anyway. You have to contact the CSP and get the sampling plan. So if you are doing the job that is marked certificate yes, you contact the CSP and get the sampling plan. The reason you want the sampling plan is that is the document of truth. So from that, you should be able to start looking up the jobs to see that they were audited and reviewed. Now, if in the course of doing that, you find something is incorrect, so again, things change even with the sampling plan. I want you to go ahead and update the sampling plan and upload it into Audit Center. So this is new. This is something that we haven't done before. And the reason I want to have it in Audit Center is twofold. I want us to look at it. We should look at it as part of the final review. But I also want that piece of evidence that I can point to for A&M and say, listen, it's uploaded in Audit Center by Santosh. That means he looked at it. Everybody is familiar with sampling plans, I hope. I got a sample one here, sample sampling plan. Let's just open one up. Hang on 1 second while it's thinking about its thing. Okay, so here's a typical sampling plan. It's just one. I asked customer service, just give me an example. And so everybody knows that we always do the headquarters. And then in this one, they had groups of sites. Get all of them. So here's the BR numbers. And this we don't care about the first surveillance. We're in the recert year. So when you're looking at these sampling plans, what's important isn't necessarily which site was visited. It's that the right number of sites for that group were visited. So this is calculated by the plan itself. So if I have 10 sites, this is a group of 10, that means I have to do 3. In MD1, it'd be the square root of the number of sites times 0.8 for a recert. That's where the calculation comes from. And so if you're going through this and let's say they planned to do 3142, but in reality they did 3138, make the update on the sampling plan and upload it. That's all I'm asking you to do. Everybody good with understanding this, getting that sampling plan and understanding what they have to do with it? Okay. So you might say, well, Dave, how do I look these things up? I don't have Dynamics. What do I do? You don't need Dynamics, and actually there's some other things you have to do when you look up the sites. So the first place you can look is in Audit Center, and the best view to do it in Audit Center is this view that says All Audits Read Only. So hopefully everybody has that. And the first place you look is this tab it says All Audits. Well, let me just do one. Let's see what this was, 1004415. Okay. Get rid of some of these. Okay, so I'm going to look that one up, 1004415. So you see nothing popped up in this view. Well, now I'm doing a recert. So that audit could have happened anywhere in the past year. So you see you got this tab, closed audits January through June, closed audits July through December. So now I'm going to click over to this tab and search for it. Okay, so there it is. It popped up. But I don't know anything about it until I click on it. And when I click on it, there's an SOV note. I go to the TR tab. This was approved by Linda Zimnick on 4/13/2020. So I know a couple things. I know the audit occurred, and I know it was TR approved. And so, like I said, checking these is not hard. It's just tedious. It takes time to go through a number of sites and remote locations. The other way to check this would be through the corporate database. So I'll show you how to do that. I have a corporate database up. You click Show Old Records. You put your BR number in. Hit refresh. Okay, and so you see a couple in here because I said show old records. So I'm just going to scroll over. Okay, these are older ones. This is the one from February 2020 for a recert audit. And I can see right there that it got TR approved. So that's a different way of determining, and probably a better way of determining if the audit occurred in Hampton. It's much faster than going through Audit Center. Whatever way you do, the next thing you have to do, get back to my charts here. So that was the second way of looking them up through the corporate database. The next thing you have to do is determine if there's any changes. When we were going through the root cause analysis of why this was happening and what we could do about it without making a massive system correction that we can't afford, one of the things that came up was certs were getting issued based off of the last certificate, but they weren't capturing all the changes, because what would happen is, let's say you had 10 jobs going through. Job number 1 had a change in section 6.3. It got TRO reviewed, it got approved, but nothing got sent to certificate. Job number 10 is done by a different audit team. They have no idea what happened over on job number 1. So when they're doing their report, their changes section 6.3 doesn't capture that change that happened in job number 1. So the answer to that is you have to look at the reports. So how do you get the reports? If you look them up in Audit Center, they may or may not be there. So back to that example. Is this the job 4415? Okay, you see? No, it's going to let me do it. So in this case, the job had not been archived, so I can pull up the report. And I'm not going to review it. The only thing I'm going to do as a reviewer is going to scroll down here and go, yep, no changes. I don't have anything to worry about. On to the next one. If the job has been archived, meaning these aren't active, you could start by looking it up here. But if this has been archived, your next step is just to call the CSP and say, hey, you need to pull the job for me, because you guys don't have access. We have a system called Easy where all documents are stored. But unless you're a full-time employee, you don't have access to it. When you've pulled the reports and looked at them, look through the changes section quickly. If you see a couple changes that aren't in the final report that you're going to send to CERT group, type them into the CF41. If you see more than a couple changes, contact the CSP and tell them you need a CRDS, corporate registration, something. Candace knew what it stood for, I don't know. But it's basically a corporate registration document that captures all the changes. So now I've introduced 2 new things now. Getting the sampling plan and uploading it, checking the reports for changes. Does anyone have a question about how they would get the reports and what they have to do with them? You guys can ask me questions, it's okay. All right. So we're getting to the end of this. The last step is finishing the job. On the very first corrective action we had related to multi-sites, we put a couple buttons in Audit Center. And the first one, let's see if I can make this bigger. I'll hit this. Is this a multi-site certificate with, I don't know why it says with a local, or a certificate with a local warehouse? Just, is it a multi-site certificate? Yes. Have all the sites and local warehouse locations been assessed and reviewed? When you hit yes, you're certifying that you looked them all up and made sure they were assessed and reviewed. So these are very important buttons to read and understand what you're doing when you're clicking yes. Don't just click through them because, oh, if I don't click this one, I can't send it to the CERT group. You're right. If you don't click it, you can't send it. But we want you to think about it and understand and answer that question honestly before you send it to the CERT group. Okay, I'm going to shrink this back down. So you might say to me, Dave, I'm doing my review, and what happens if I find that all the audits have not been done or all the jobs have not been through the approval process? You have two options. Your first option is to hold the report. Okay, so you've got that report. It's marked certificate yes. You can hold it and monitor the other jobs and wait till they go through. That's your first option. We try and assign the same reviewer for all the multi-sites. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it's resource constraints. Sometimes the reviewer did one of the sites as an auditor, so obviously we can't assign them to review their own work. But we do try and keep it to the same person. The other option you have is to change the job you're reviewing to cert no and make a different job cert yes. So if you want to do that, so let's say you've reviewed it and the audit at one of the sites hasn't even happened yet. So you go, well, that could be 2 months before that audit occurs. I don't want to hold this report in my queue for 2 months, accumulating TAT time, and then I got to monitor it. You contact the CSP and say, hey, I'd like to change this one to cert no and move it forward. The reason I'm saying contact the CSP and then contact VG and have them make the change is because if you change your job to cert no, some other job has to be changed to cert yes. Otherwise, nothing gets sent to the certificate group. And that has happened a few times. We catch it on the expiring cert list, but it hurts to catch it that way because now you're within 2 months of cert expiration. So if you want to do this plan, you have to do some coordination with the CSP and with the verification group people. So this is the methodology. Again, walking through it very quickly. You start with the cert. You figure out if the job you're doing is cert yes. Check your SOV notes. Try and figure out if you're sampling or doing all the sites. Get the sampling plan. Use that as your document of truth. Upload it if it has to upload it, even if it needs no corrections, but make corrections if needed and upload it. Search for jobs, either an audit center or the corporate database. Get the reports, check them for changes, sign off the CF41, and you're done. So now I'll open it up again. I really, if you have questions, I want you to be able to ask them. So does anyone have any questions about what we've gone through so far? Okay. I'm going to hit the last couple topics. Talked in the beginning about service, and that relates to TAT. At this point, everybody knows we did a process change to align with how Germany does their reports. So in the past, 3 years back, when a job was done, we would not put it in the TRQ until the ARs were closed. And then it would go to the final review. That was a waste of 30 days because we could have been reviewing that report while the ARs were being closed. And so we realigned with Germany and the reports came in much earlier and the reviews got done faster. But we still have some problems, and looking at the problems that drive TAT could be the number of reports. So I told you at the beginning of the year we had a whole influx of reports that hit our queue. Right now the queue is really low, 195, and some of that has to do with COVID and the fact that ITF is not doing audits. And so at the end of the year, ITF is probably going to be doing a lot of audits and the queues are going to be high and we'll be in a different situation. Another factor is the TR not getting to the reports, and this generally happens in the small programs because in the small programs you might have very few auditors and maybe only one reviewer, and so that reviewer is sometimes a full-time auditor, and so they're doing audits and they're doing review and they're part-time, and it's understandable that they're going to have a higher TAT time than somebody who's not doing audits full-time. The last issue is auditors not replying to the TR comments. So I thought about why don't auditors reply. Some of the problem is being specific. So this isn't like auditing. When you give a TR comment, it's not like giving an AR to a client. You can tell them what they have to do to fix it. It's not consulting, and you can be very direct. Hey, you need to update your ARA to include a statement regarding what you reviewed to accept the AR, generate and save a CF-155 and re-release the report. That's very direct of what has to be done. So you can tell them what the problem is and tell them how to fix it. Follow-up reminders are done out of the system automatically. That gives 3 automatic reminders. I go through my queues every week, and I will send reminders to people if they haven't responded in a week, because you can generate a manual reminder. So the way you do it, if you haven't done it before, let's see, I might need an active job to do this on. Of course, I don't have an active job open when I need an active job. Let's do it this way. Okay, these are the ones in my queue. This is a final review. I'm going to show you how to do this, but I just got this today, so I'm not going to send the guy a reminder. So you would go in here. I got it. Never mind. I got to get one that has a comment on it, actually. Hang on. Okay, here's one that has a comment on it. You would go in here. You go to your comments. And all you do is hit this orange button. And it'll take your comment and it'll pop it up here and it'll send it again. You'd have to hit send and it'll go. So if I do this, it'll go like this. And then I can edit it if I want to. And then I hit save and it sends the comment. But again, I'm not going to do this for this one. Everybody hopefully understands how to send the reminders. Lastly, in that one, level 2 issues. Everyone knows there's level 1 and level 2. When you hit the button of a T comment, like T101 is a level 1 issue. The form itself won't let you send it forward to CG with a level 1 issue. But you can send certs to the cert group with level 2 issues. And I would tell you this, if you're in a situation where you have an expiring certificate, and maybe you have level 2 issues that the auditors have not replied to, go ahead and send it forward and work the comments afterwards, because we don't want to penalize necessarily the client because auditors aren't responding. Last point on this, and I say here in the chart after a week, but use your own discretion. Sometimes I know people are super swamped and busy, so I won't hit the BLM on the reminders after week 1. I'll give them a few weeks to try and reply, and if I know I have the time, you want to be generous because we've all been in these situations. But on the other hand, there's some point where we don't get paid as reviewers to run down auditors to get them to respond. That's why BLMs make the big money. So if they're not responding, you got to flip it over to the BLM and say, listen, I've sent this guy 3 reminders and I can't get a response. I need you to work it. And it's okay. And the last point, some percentage of the auditors think we might be picking on them. I'd say 95% of the auditors understand what we're doing and why we're doing it and why what we're doing is related to continual improvement. But of course, there's always that 5% that nobody wants an FPY, but doesn't see the value in the FPY. Our primary goal is to see evidence to support the issuance of the cert. So that's the level 1 type stuff. The level 2 type stuff, that's really continual improvement. So in this area, if you're doing a review, make sure you're reviewing it to the standard that it was done to. And so, Gaia, you're an IATF guy. If you're reviewing a QM report, don't infuse IATF requirements into it. And I, as an AS9100 auditor, got to remind myself not to infuse AS91. And Pat's medical, and she can't infuse medical if she's doing a pure QM report. So, I mean, I know that's common sense, but we do have a number of reviewers who kind of sneak in these program-specific requirements into their review, and it kind of creates havoc for us. And it's none of the people I mentioned, by the way. I was just using it as an example. Make sure your comments are based in 17021, our program, which is either QMS or direction provided by management, mugs, coffees, direction given in national meetings, stuff on the auditor portal, or the standard requirements. So they should be able to push back to you and say, hey, where is this required? And you should be able to answer that question, just like our clients push back on us sometimes about where is this, you're writing me up for a nonconformance, where is it required? Number 3, something we DQS don't do enough of. If you see something good, point it out. Don't give them praise where it's not warranted. If people see through false praise in a heartbeat. But, I get a lot of really excellent reports. And, when you're doing the audit yourself, you know how much it takes to put together a really excellent report. All the time that's spent in that hotel room or after work at home now, trying to get these reports done when you have all the other demands of life on you. It's hard. It's a hard job. So if you see somebody doing something really good, give them some praise, copy their BLM on it. We talked about this. If you see something wrong, tell them how to fix it. Sometimes if it's super minor, give it as feedback. And I'm going to give you an example from this morning when I was reviewing a report. So I had this guy's report. Excellent. Really good report. Summarized the sample all throughout except 8.7. When I got to 8.7, he didn't summarize his sample. And then I had to go digging through the detail notes to find the sample, and I found it. He actually did it. So could I issue him an FPY? Sure. And there's a May 2018 white paper and 3 national meetings that say summarize your sample and a model report. There's enough communication to say you need to do this. Did I do it? No. I mean, he had done the auditing. He'd done an excellent job. He missed something. It was a level 2 issue. Use some discretion when you're issuing these things. Remember, we're trying to build up the audit staff and continually improve. And unless your program requires it, please don't write up typos. So that's what I got. Our biggest issue, again, is the issuance of multi-site certificates before all sites and remote locations have been audited and TR approved. And hopefully I've given you a methodology you can use to ensure that that doesn't happen to you. We're doing good as a TR team. Our metrics look really good, and we need to keep in mind, we're on the same team as the auditors. We're all auditors, and so we want to treat them as we would want to be treated. And sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes we have difficult situations with the auditors, and it's frustrating. But we're here to help them with continual improvement. So with that, I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions. Okay, if you have questions subsequent to this, feel free to send it to me. Everybody who's on this call, I'm going to send you the 10-question quiz. It's super easy. Don't overthink it. Everything that's been asked has been answered in these 20 charts. Please have it back to me by the end of the week, because this is a ETQ car. We have to get a corrective action and show that there is training and competence, and that's what I'm using the quiz for. So with that, I'm going to sign off for the night. Thank you all again for participating in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Dave. It was
Hey.
very good. It was very helpful.
Good, I'm glad. We'll talk to you all later.